In the heart of Dubai, where glass towers pierce the sky like diamonds and money flows as freely as the desert wind, the most lavish wedding of March 2022 lasted exactly 18 hours. The marriage lasted 6 days. By dawn on the 7th day, a bride lay dead on the marble plaza of the Burj Khalifa, her white nightgown billowing in the morning breeze like a fallen angel. The police ruled it suicide within 3 hours. Case closed. Story over. But here's what they didn't know. The woman who jumped wasn't running from a simple affair. She had discovered something far more horrifying. Hidden in her new husband's laptop were videos, not of romance, but of systematic psychological torture. Videos of him with the Filipina maid who served her breakfast. But these weren't affair videos. They were training sessions, conversion protocols, documentation of how he had broken his previous wives and transformed them into servants. The maid wasn't his mistress. She was wife number 1. And the quiet Japanese woman who cleaned the bedroom? Wife number 2. The Nigerian woman who cooked their meals? Wife number 3. All of them reported dead to their families. All of them erased. All of them standing right there, serving her tea with dead eyes. This isn't a story about infidelity. This is a story about a man who collected women like art pieces, and when he grew tired of them as wives, he didn't let them go. He made them disappear while keeping them close enough to serve him. And when his 4th wife discovered the truth, she made a choice that would finally expose his crimes, but at the ultimate price. Welcome to our channel where we expose the darkness hiding behind the Middle East's most glittering facades. Today's investigation will shatter everything you think you know about marriage, identity, and the price of being owned. Subscribe now because what you're about to hear has never been fully revealed until this moment. The real story of Sheikh Mazin Al-Nahyan's collection, and how one woman's death finally freed 7 others from a prison without walls. Meet Elif Demir, 24 years old, born in Istanbul to a middle-class family that ran a successful textile business. Beautiful in that effortless Mediterranean way, with dark hair that cascaded down her back and eyes that held both intelligence and warmth. She had graduated top of her class from Boğaziçi University with a degree in architecture, spoke 4 languages fluently, and had dreams of designing sustainable housing for refugee communities. But Elif had a secret that was slowly consuming her from the inside out. 3 years ago, during her junior year abroad in Paris, she had fallen in love with a fellow student. A passionate relationship that lasted 8 months before ending when her family discovered it. The shame had been crushing. Her father hadn't spoken to her for 6 months. Her mother cried herself to sleep every night. The guilt Elif carried was a weight that never lightened. When the marriage proposal came from Sheikh Mazin Al-Nahyan's family, Elif's parents saw it as redemption. They saw a successful businessman, a man with royal connections, someone who could restore their family's honor. What they didn't see were the warning signs, the way he insisted on a quick engagement with minimal interaction between the couple. The wedding was held at the Burj Al Arab, Dubai's most iconic hotel. 600 guests filled the venue, a mixture of Dubai's elite, Turkish diplomats, and social media influencers hired to document every moment of perfection. Elif wore a custom gown that cost more than her father's annual salary. But beneath the golden facade, Elif felt a growing sense of unease. During the wedding reception, she noticed something strange. Mazin employed an unusually large household staff, and they all seemed terrified of him. One woman, a Filipina who appeared to be the head housekeeper, flinched visibly when Mazin reached past her. Elif caught the woman's eye for just a moment, and what she saw there made her blood run cold. It wasn't fear. It was recognition, followed immediately by the deepest pity Elif had ever witnessed. Sheikh Mazin Al-Nahyan, 43 years old, presented himself as everything a woman could want. Educated at the London School of Economics, he ran a successful luxury real estate development company. He was distantly related to the ruling family, a connection he mentioned just often enough to be impressive. His first marriage, he explained to Elif's family, had ended tragically. His wife, a Filipina woman named Maria, had died in a car accident 5 years ago. The story was told with such convincing sadness that no one thought to question it. No one asked to see a death certificate. No one wondered why there were no photographs of this dead wife in his home. What Elif didn't know was that Mazin had perfected a system over the past decade. He would meet a woman, typically someone vulnerable, someone whose family was desperate. He would court her properly, marry her with traditional ceremonies, and for a few months, play the devoted husband. Then, slowly, he would begin the transformation. Her passport would disappear. Contact with family would be eliminated. Her clothes would change from modern to uniform. Her bedroom would shift from the master suite to the servants' quarters. And then would come the final stage, the erasure. He would tell her family she had died, stage elaborate funerals, produce fake death certificates. The women's families would mourn and move on. Meanwhile, the women themselves would be transformed from wives into servants, their identities stripped away, living with the knowledge that the world believed them dead. The wedding night began in Mazin's penthouse apartment, a sprawling space on the 124th floor of the Burj Khalifa. The apartment was decorated with impeccable taste, contemporary art, Italian marble, custom furniture. Everything was perfect, sterile, controlled. Elif wandered through the apartment, trying to familiarize herself with her new home. As she explored, she noticed something odd. There were several bedrooms, but only the master suite looked inhabited. The others were occupied by staff, 3 women who lived in the apartment. Maria, the Filipina. Yuki, a Japanese woman. Amara, a Nigerian woman. All housekeepers, Mazin had explained. All living here to maintain the household. But something felt wrong. The way they moved. The way they never made eye contact. The way they seemed to exist like ghosts. In the kitchen, Elif found Maria preparing tea. "You're Maria, right?" Elif asked in English, trying to be friendly. "My husband mentioned you. You've worked for him for a long time." The woman's hands froze. When she looked up at Elif, her eyes were filled with terror and desperate warning. "Yes, ma'am," she said quietly. "A very long time." "You must have known his first wife then," Elif continued. "The one who died in the car accident?" "Maria, I think her name was too." Maria's face went completely blank. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. And then she simply lowered her head and returned to her work, saying nothing. Before Elif could press further, Mazin's voice called from the study. "Elif, Habibti, come join me." Elif walked toward the study, her heart pounding. Something was very wrong here, something she couldn't quite name. But she was about to find out exactly what her new husband was hiding. And that discovery would drive her to the balcony 6 days later. Mazin's study was different from the rest of the apartment. Dark wood paneling, bookshelves with leather-bound volumes, a massive desk covered with papers and multiple phones. The windows were covered with heavy curtains, creating an intimate, almost claustrophobic atmosphere. Mazin sat behind his desk, still wearing his wedding suit. He looked relaxed, comfortable. This was his domain. "Come sit," he said, gesturing to a chair across from him. "We should talk about expectations for our marriage." Elif sat, trying to appear calm. "Of course. I want to be a good wife." "I'm sure you do," Mazin replied, and there was something condescending in his tone. "But let me be clear about what that means in this household. You will not work. Your architecture career is over. You will not maintain contact with your university friends. You will see your family only when I approve it. You will dress modestly at all times. And you will be respectful to the household staff." Each word landed like a stone. This wasn't a discussion, it was a declaration. I thought we agreed I could continue my work," Elif said carefully. Mazin smiled coldly. "I said many things during our engagement. Courtship requires certain performances. But now we're married, and we can be honest. Your role is to be my wife, to manage my household, and eventually to give me children." The casual way he admitted to lying sent a chill through Elif. "The staff," she said, trying to keep her voice casual. "Maria, how long has she been with you?" 8 years, Mazin said. "Very efficient. 8 years. The same timeline as his supposed marriage to a woman named Maria who supposedly died 5 years ago." Over the next few days, Elif watched the household carefully. Something was deeply wrong. The three women, Maria, Yuki, and Amara, moved through the apartment like programmed robots. They never spoke unless spoken to. They never made eye contact. They lived in small rooms barely bigger than closets. They were available 24 hours a day, never leaving the apartment. And Mazin treated them with a strange mixture of ownership and contempt. He would critique their work harshly, but he also seemed to take pleasure in their subservience. He would make them stand for hours. He would change his demands constantly. He seemed to enjoy watching them scramble to please him. On the third night, Elif couldn't sleep. She wandered into Mazin's study, knowing he was in the shower. She needed to understand what was happening in this apartment. His laptop was open on the desk, still logged in. Without thinking, Elif sat down and began looking through his files. What she found made her blood run cold. There was a folder labeled Collection Management. Inside were subfolders for each woman: Maria, Yuki, Amara, and disturbingly, one labeled Elif New Acquisition. She opened Maria's folder first. Inside were hundreds of files. Photos of Maria on her wedding day. Beautiful, smiling, radiant. She had been Mazin's wife. The wedding photos were dated 2014. Then there were progress reports. Documents detailing her conversion process. How long it took to break her spirit. How she resisted at first. How isolation and psychological manipulation eventually worked. And then there were videos. Elif clicked on one, her hands shaking. The video showed Maria, younger, kneeling in this very study. Mazin's voice was calm, almost gentle. Maria, your family held your funeral last month. Your mother cried beautifully. Your siblings have divided your belongings. They've moved on. You don't exist to them anymore. You exist only here. Only for me. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. Maria was sobbing. Please, let me call them. Let me tell them I'm alive. But you're not alive, Mazin said. Not in any way that matters. Now go clean the kitchen. And stop crying. It's unbecoming. Elif felt bile rising in her throat. She opened Yuki's folder. Same pattern. Wedding photos from 2017. Progress reports. Videos of psychological torture. Yuki begging to see her family. Mazin calmly explaining that she was dead to them. That she existed only as his servant now. Amara's folder. Married in 2022. More recent. The videos showed her still fighting, still resisting. And Mazin seemed to enjoy her resistance. He would punish her psychologically, then document her breaking process like a scientist observing an experiment. And then Elif saw her own folder. Elif New Acquisition. Started March 2022. Inside was a detailed plan. How long he estimated it would take to break her. Her vulnerabilities. Shame about her past. Desperate need for family approval. The conversion timeline. Where he would tell her family she died. Drowning accident. Planned for 2 weeks from now. Her future role in the household. Cooking specialist. Once conversion complete. Elif's hands were shaking so badly she could barely control the mouse. This was insane. This was impossible. But it was all here. Documented. Planned. Systematic. She kept clicking through files. Found a master ledger. 11 women total across his 7 properties in Dubai. Maria, Yuki, and Amara here in the penthouse, his showcase conversions. 8 others scattered in his other buildings, in various stages of breaking. And then she found the most horrifying folder. Training Protocol Master Video. She clicked on it. The video was over 2 hours long. It was Mazin speaking directly to the camera, explaining his entire system. How to select vulnerable women. How to manipulate their families into approving the marriage. How to isolate them. How to use their shame and cultural conditioning against them. How to break them psychologically without leaving physical evidence. How to stage their deaths. How to convert them from wives to servants. It was a tutorial, a manual. He had created an instruction guide for destroying women's identities. I call it preservation, Mazin said in the video. his voice filled with pride. These women are corrupted by modern ideas, by Western values. They need structure, purpose, control. As wives, they're temporary, they age, they complain, they demand things. But as servants, they're permanent. They're perfected. And they can never leave because the world thinks they're dead. It's the perfect system. Elif heard the shower turn off. Mazin was finished. She had minutes before he came back. She grabbed a USB drive from his desk drawer and began copying files. The master ledger, the training video, everything. Her hands shook, but she forced herself to stay calm. This was evidence. This would prove what he was doing. But as the files copied, reality crashed over her. Even with evidence, who would believe her? Mazin was a powerful sheikh with connections throughout Dubai's government. She was a foreign bride with no connections, no power. He had successfully convinced 11 families that their daughters were dead. He had police and coroners on his payroll. The death certificates were official, filed with multiple governments. If she went to the police, he would simply say she was mentally unstable. A hysterical bride having a breakdown. And they would believe him, not her. He would take her phone, her passport, her evidence. And then her conversion would begin. The USB finished copying. Elif pocketed it and closed the laptop just as she heard Mazin's footsteps approaching. She stood up quickly, trying to look innocent. Mazin entered, wearing a robe, his hair wet. He saw her standing by his desk and his expression changed, the warmth evaporating, replaced by something cold. "What are you doing in here?" he asked quietly. "I couldn't sleep," Elif said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I was just looking around." Mazin walked to his desk and checked his laptop. The screen was locked, but he could see someone had been using it. His eyes narrowed. "Did you use my computer?" "No," Elif lied. Mazin studied her face for a long moment. Then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're a terrible liar, Elif. I can see it in your face. You found something, didn't you?" Elif's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might explode. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Mazin walked toward her slowly. "You found my files, my videos, and now you know the truth about Maria, Yuki, and Amara. About what they used to be, about what you're going to become." Elif backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The study door was behind Mazin. "They were all wives once," Mazin said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "Just like you. Excited brides who thought they were starting new lives. But I grew tired of them. And I can't have ex-wives running around, telling stories, causing problems. So I transformed them, from temporary wives into permanent servants. It's really quite elegant." "You're insane," Elif whispered. "No, I'm efficient. And you're going to learn the same lesson they did. The world will think you drowned in 2 weeks. Your family will mourn. And you'll spend the rest of your life serving me, knowing that no one is coming to save you because everyone thinks you're already dead." Elif felt the USB drive in her pocket. She had evidence, but she was trapped in this apartment. The doors were locked. The windows were bulletproof. Even if she screamed, the neighbors were gone for the season. "I can see you're thinking about escape," Mazin said, reading her expression. "They all thought about it too. Amara even tried. She managed to get to the balcony once, screamed for help. The neighbors called the police. Do you know what happened? I told them she was mentally ill, having a psychotic episode. They believed me. They returned her to my care with apologies. That's when she learned that there is no escape. No one will help you. No one will believe you. You belong to me now." Elif's mind was racing. She had evidence on the USB drive. But what good was evidence if she couldn't get it to anyone who would act on it? "Go to bed, Elif," Mazin said, his voice hardening. "Tomorrow your training begins. Maria will teach you how to clean properly, how to serve properly, how to exist properly as my servant. And in 2 weeks you'll attend your own funeral. Your family will cry, and then you'll take your place with the others." Elif stumbled out of the study, her mind reeling. She went to her small room and sat on the bed, the USB drive burning in her pocket. She had 3 choices. 1, try to escape. But he had made it clear that was impossible. The apartment was a prison. Even if she got out, he had connections throughout Dubai. He would find her. 2. Submit. Let him break her. Become what Maria, Yuki, and Amara had become. Live as a ghost for the rest of her life. 3. Expose him. But how? If she went to the police, they wouldn't believe her. If she tried to contact her family, he monitored all communications. If she tried to run, he would catch her. Unless, Elif thought about what Mazin had said. About Amara on the balcony. About the neighbors calling the police. He had convinced them she was mentally ill, and they had believed him. But what if there were witnesses? Not just neighbors, but dozens of witnesses. Hundreds. What if it was so public that he couldn't explain it away? What if she didn't try to escape? What if she made sure that when she died, it was so public, so documented, so witnessed, that an investigation would be inevitable? The USB drive had evidence. But evidence was useless if no one looked for it. She needed to create a situation where the police would have to investigate, where they would search his laptop, his files, his properties, where they would have to look deeper than his explanations. Elif stared out her small window at the Dubai skyline, 124 floors up. She thought about Maria, Yuki, and Amara, women who had been broken so completely they had forgotten how to fight. She thought about the 8 other women in his other properties, living the same nightmare. She thought about Svetlana, Priya, and Carmen, the women he was hunting next. And she thought about her family, who would be told in 2 weeks that she had drowned. They would mourn her. They would never know the truth, unless she made sure they found out. Elif made her decision. In 3 days, when Mazin would be occupied with a business meeting, she would make her move. She would take the USB drive. She would go to the balcony. And she would make sure the world was watching when she ended this nightmare the only way she could. It wouldn't save her, but it would save the others. And sometimes that had to be enough. The next morning, Elif woke to Maria's soft knock at 5 a.m. "Time for your training, ma'am," Maria said in that hollow voice that had once been full of life. Elif followed Maria to the kitchen, where Yuki and Amara were already working. The 3 women moved in perfect synchronization, a choreographed dance of servitude they had performed thousands of times. As Maria showed Elif how to prepare Mazin's breakfast to his exact specifications, eggs cooked for exactly 3 minutes, coffee at precisely 85 degrees. Elif studied the woman carefully. This wasn't just a housekeeper. This was a woman who had worn a wedding dress 8 years ago. A woman who had family in the Philippines mourning her death. A woman who had been systematically destroyed and rebuilt as a servant. "Maria," Elif whispered when they were briefly alone in the pantry, away from the kitchen cameras. "I found his files last night. The videos. I know what he did to you. I know you were his wife." Maria's hands trembled violently, and for just a moment, her mask cracked. Her eyes filled with tears, and Elif saw the woman she used to be flickering beneath the broken surface. "Please don't," Maria whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't talk about that. If he thinks I've been talking to you about the past, he'll isolate me again." 3 months in the dark room. No light. No human contact. Just a slot in the door for food. I can't survive that again. "I'm not going to let him do this to me," Elif said firmly. "And I'm going to make sure what happened to you gets exposed." Maria's eyes widened with a mixture of hope and terror. "You can't fight him. We all tried. I fought for 2 years before he broke me. Yuki lasted 18 months. Amara fought the longest, almost 3 years of resistance. Do you know what finally broke her?" Elif shook her head. "He showed her videos of her family moving on without her," Maria said, her voice cracking. "Her younger sister's wedding, her mother celebrating holidays, her father being interviewed, saying he had accepted his daughter's death and found peace. Mazin had paid people to record these moments. He made Amara watch hours of her own erasure. He made her see that the world had forgotten her. That's when she stopped fighting. When she realized that even if she escaped, she had nothing to go back to." "That's not going to happen to me," Elif said. "I still have time that my family doesn't think I'm dead yet." He said 2 weeks. I have 12 days before he stages my drowning. Then run, Maria whispered urgently. Today, while he's sleeping. Take your passport from his safe. The code is his birthday, April 15th, 1981. Take money from the emergency cash drawer in his desk. Get to the airport. Fly anywhere. Just leave. He'll find me, Elif said. He has connections everywhere. And even if I escape, what about you? What about Yuki and Amara? What about the 8 other women he has in his other properties? I saw the ledger, Maria. 11 women. 11 families who think their daughters are dead. If I run, he just becomes more careful. He perfects his system. And more women disappear. Maria's face crumpled. Then what can you do? You're one person. He's a sheik with money, power, connections in the police, the government, everywhere. Even if you had evidence, who would believe you over him? Elif pulled the USB drive from her pocket. I have evidence. I copied everything from his laptop. The training video, the ledger, the files on all of you, videos of him psychologically torturing you. Everything. Maria stared at the small device. That's everything? Our wedding photos? The conversion videos? The proof that we're not really dead? Everything, Elif confirmed. For the first time since Elif had met her, Maria's eyes showed something other than fear. A spark of hope, quickly extinguished by harsh reality. But evidence doesn't matter if you can't get it to someone who will act on it. If you go to the police, he'll convince them you're mentally unstable. He has psychiatrists on his payroll who will testify you're delusional. He has police officers who owe him favors. The evidence will disappear, and so will you. I know, Elif said quietly. That's why I'm not going to the police. Then what? They heard footsteps. Mazin was approaching. Maria's mask slammed back into place with terrifying speed, her face becoming blank and subservient. Good morning, ladies, Mazin said, entering the kitchen. He was dressed in an expensive suit, ready for his day. His eyes lingered on Elif with satisfaction. Elif, you're looking well-rested, ready for another day of learning your future responsibilities. Yes, sir, Elif said, forcing herself to meet his eyes without flinching. Excellent. I have business meetings all morning in my study. I'll need the household to remain completely silent during this time. Maria will continue your training. By the end of the week, I expect you to be able to prepare my breakfast without supervision. He paused, studying her face. You seem different this morning, more accepting of your situation. Good. The smart ones adapt quickly. After he left for his study, Elif continued her training with the 3 women. She learned how to clean the apartment to Mazin's impossible standards, how every surface had to be spotless, how his clothes had to be arranged by color and season, how the temperature in each room had to be maintained at specific degrees, how his schedule ran like clockwork, and they had to anticipate his needs before he voiced them. It was a masterclass in control. Every aspect of the household was designed to remind these women that they had no autonomy, no choices, no existence beyond serving him. During a brief moment in the laundry room, away from cameras, Amara spoke to Elif for the first time. You still have fire in your eyes? Amara said quietly, folding one of Mazin's shirts with mechanical precision. I recognize it. I had it too once. It will fade. He'll make sure of it. What finally broke you? Elif asked. Amara's hands stilled. He didn't break me with isolation or punishment. He broke me with hope. Every few months, he would tell me that if I served well enough, if I proved myself, he might let me contact my family. Just one phone call, just to hear their voices. So I tried. I served perfectly for months. And then he would say I wasn't quite ready yet. Maybe in another few months. This went on for 2 years. And one day, I realized he would never let me call them. That the hope he was giving me was just another form of torture. That's when I stopped fighting. When I understood that hope was more painful than acceptance. I'm sorry, Elif whispered. Don't be sorry, Amara said, her voice hardening slightly. Just don't end up like us. Whatever you're planning, and I can see you're planning something, do it soon. before he starts the psychological games. Once he gets inside your head, you can't get him out. That afternoon, while Mazin was locked in his study for a 3-hour video conference, Elif made her decision. She couldn't escape. She couldn't go to the police. She couldn't fight him directly. But she could do one thing that would force an investigation he couldn't control. She could make her death so public, so documented, so witnessed, that his explanations wouldn't work. She could create a scandal so massive that the authorities would have to dig deeper. And she could hide the USB drive where investigators would find it. Not in the apartment where Mazin could destroy it, but on her body. Elif found Maria in the kitchen. "Tomorrow morning," she whispered. "Wednesday, during his business meeting. I need you to do something for me." "What?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. "I need you to call my family in Turkey. Tell them everything. Tell them I'm alive, that I found evidence of what he's done, and that whatever they hear in the news, they need to demand a full investigation. They need to demand to see my body. They need to push for an autopsy. Can you do that?" Maria's face went pale. "He'll know. He monitors the phone lines. Any call that goes out, he'll trace it." "I know," Elif said. "But by the time he figures it out, it will be too late. Make the call at exactly 9 a.m. That's when his video conference starts. He won't check the phone logs until after it's done." "Too late for what?" Maria asked, though her eyes showed she already understood. Elif didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, "After everything is over, after the investigation starts, tell them about the USB drive. I'm going to tape it to my body before I—" She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "No," Maria breathed. "No, don't do this. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Elif said firmly. "He's too powerful, too connected. The only way to beat him is to make this so public that he can't cover it up. My family needs to demand answers. They need to push for a real investigation. And that USB drive has everything, proof that you, Yuki, and Amara are his former wives. Proof of the 11 women. Proof of his entire operation. When investigators find it on my body, they'll have to act on it." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "You're going to kill yourself to save us?" "I'm going to die anyway," Elif said. "Either slowly, broken piece by piece until I become what you are, or quickly, on my own terms, in a way that might actually save the others. Which would you choose?" Maria had no answer. She simply pulled Elif into a fierce hug, the first genuine human contact Elif had felt since arriving in this nightmare apartment. "Your family's phone number," Maria finally said. "Give it to me. I'll call them. I'll tell them everything. I'll make them understand that they need to fight for you, even after you're gone." That night, Elif couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed, thinking about her mother, her father, her younger sister. She thought about the wedding 6 days ago. Had it only been 6 days? Felt like a lifetime. She thought about Maria, married to Mazin in 2014, spending 8 years as a ghost. She thought about Yuki, erased in 2017, her violin-playing hands now only used for cleaning. She thought about Amara, broken by false hope, serving the man who had destroyed her identity. And she thought about the 8 other women scattered across Dubai in Mazin's properties. Women whose names she knew from the ledger. Women who were living the same nightmare, waiting for a rescue that would never come unless someone exposed the system. Elif got out of bed and retrieved the USB drive from its hiding place. She found medical tape in the bathroom cabinet and carefully secured the drive to her inner thigh, where it would be found during an autopsy but wouldn't be visible under her nightgown. Then she wrote a note. Not a suicide note, but an accusation. She wrote down everything. Mazin's full name, the addresses of his 7 properties, the names of all 11 women, the fact that he had video evidence of his crimes on his laptop. She wrote that she was not mentally ill, not having a breakdown, but making a conscious choice to expose a predator. She hid this note in her nightgown pocket, along with the USB drive taped to her body. Tomorrow morning, at 9 a.m., Maria would call her family. At 9:15 a.m., while Mazin was locked in his meeting, Elif would go to the balcony. And at 9:16 a.m., she would jump. It was the only way to make sure that her death would trigger the investigation that would free the others. The only way to ensure that the evidence would be found, that the authorities would have to dig deeper, that Mazin's explanations wouldn't be enough. She was going to die, but she was going to die fighting, and she was going to take Mazin's entire operation down with her. As Elif finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, her last thought was simple. Tomorrow, the world will know the truth. Tomorrow they'll all be free. Elif woke at 5 a.m. to Maria's knock, but this time it felt different. She knew it was the last time she would hear that sound. The last morning she would wake up in this prison. She dressed carefully in her white nightgown, the same one she had worn on her wedding night 6 days ago. It seemed fitting. She had entered this nightmare in white. She would leave it the same way. Maria's eyes were red when Elif opened the door. She had been crying. "You don't have to do this," Maria whispered desperately. "Please, we'll find another way." "There is no other way," Elif said gently. "You know that. You've been here 8 years, Maria. 8 years of looking for another way. This is it." In the kitchen, Yuki and Amara were already working, but when they saw Elif, something passed between the 4 women. An understanding, a goodbye that couldn't be spoken aloud because of the cameras. Mazin emerged from his bedroom at 6:15 a.m. as always, impeccably dressed. "Good morning, ladies," he said with satisfaction. "Elif, your progress has been acceptable. In another week, you'll be ready to begin your full duties. I've already prepared the drowning accident narrative for your family. A tragic slip at the marina. Very believable." Elif forced herself to smile. "Thank you, sir." She saw surprise flicker across his face. He had expected more resistance. "You're learning," he said approvingly. "I knew you were intelligent. Intelligence makes the process faster. You'll be fully converted in half the time it took Amara." After breakfast, Mazin announced he had important video conferences scheduled all morning. "I need absolute silence from 9 a.m. until noon," he said. "No cleaning on this floor. No interruptions. Maria, keep Elif occupied with laundry duties on the lower level." "Yes, sir," Maria said, her voice barely steady. Mazin disappeared into his study at 8:45 a.m. Elif heard the heavy door close, the lock click into place. He would be completely absorbed in his meetings, his phone on silent, his attention focused on the screen. Maria grabbed Elif's hand. "It's almost time. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure?" "I'm sure," Elif said. "Do you have my family's number?" Maria nodded, pulling out a piece of paper where she had written it down. "I'll call them at exactly 9 a.m. I'll tell them everything about the videos, about us, about the USB drive on your body. I'll tell them to demand a full investigation, to not accept any explanations from Mazin or the police. And tell them I love them," Elif said, her voice breaking slightly. "Tell them this wasn't their fault. Tell them I'm sorry for the shame I brought them before, and I'm sorry for this. But tell them this is the only way to stop him." Yuki approached, her face wet with tears. She pressed something into Elif's hand. A small Buddhist prayer bead she wore hidden under her uniform. "For courage," she whispered in heavily accented English. "You are braver than all of us. You will free us." Amara was next, hugging Elif tightly. "When they investigate, when they find us, I'll tell them everything," she promised. "I'll make sure your death means something. I'll make sure he pays for what he did to all of us." At 8:58 a.m., Elif made her way to the living room. The balcony door was visible from here, floor-to-ceiling glass looking out over Dubai's glittering skyline. She had asked Maria earlier about the door. "Is it locked?" "Always," Maria had confirmed. "But the key is on his key ring, which he leaves on his desk during meetings so it doesn't make noise when he moves." Elif had nodded. She wouldn't need the key. At 9 a.m. exactly, she heard Maria pick up the phone in the kitchen, calling Turkey, calling her family, setting everything in motion. Elif walked to the balcony door and looked out at the city below, 124 floors up. The Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. From up here, the cars looked like toys. The people were invisible. She thought about jumping from this height. The fall would take approximately 8 seconds. 8 seconds of flight. 8 seconds of freedom before the impact. She pressed her hand against the glass, feeling its coldness. The door was locked, but the glass was bulletproof, yes. Unbreakable from the outside, but from the inside. Elif had learned something during her architecture studies. Bulletproof glass was designed to withstand external impacts, bullets, explosions, weather. But internal pressure, applied at the right point with enough force, could compromise it. Especially tempered glass, which was stronger than regular glass but shattered into small pieces when its integrity was breached. She had noticed yesterday that one of Mazin's decorative sculptures was made of solid bronze, heavy, dense, with a pointed base. It sat on a side table near the balcony door. Elif picked up the sculpture. It was heavier than she expected, maybe 15 pounds. She tested its weight, remembering her physics classes. Force equals mass times acceleration. Behind her, she heard Mazin's voice through his study door, speaking in Arabic to someone on his video call. He was completely absorbed. He had no idea what was about to happen. Elif lifted the sculpture high and brought it down with all her strength against the glass door at its corner, the weakest point. The sound was explosive. The glass didn't break immediately, but a spiderweb of cracks spread from the impact point. She swung again, and again. On the fourth impact, the glass shattered spectacularly, collapsing into thousands of small pieces. The Dubai morning air rushed in, hot and dry, carrying the sounds of the city from 124 floors below. Behind her, Elif heard Mazin's study door slam open. What the hell? But Elif was already stepping through the broken door onto the balcony. The wind hit her immediately, whipping her nightgown around her legs, tangling her hair across her face. Elif! Mazin's voice was a roar of fury. Get back inside. Now! Elif walked to the railing. The drop was dizzying. She could see everything. The marina where he planned to stage her drowning. The Palm Jumeirah stretching into the Persian Gulf. The desert beyond the city's edge. It was beautiful. The last thing she would see would be beautiful. If you take one more step, I swear to God. Mazin was on the balcony now, but he stopped several feet away. He could see in her face that she was beyond his control, beyond his threats. You can't stop me, Elif said, turning to look at him one last time. And you can't stop what's coming. I found everything, Mazin. The videos, the files, the proof of what you did to Maria, Yuki, Amara, and 8 others. I copied it all. His face went pale. You're bluffing. My laptop is password protected. My files are encrypted. You left it logged in 3 nights ago, Elif said. I saw everything. The training video where you explain your entire system. The ledger with all 11 women's names. The wedding photos. The conversion progress reports. Everything. It doesn't matter, Mazin said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Even if you copied files, you're trapped in this apartment. Where would you hide them? I'll find whatever you took and destroy it. And then your conversion will be much, much more painful than the others. Elif smiled sadly. You won't find it, because I'm not hiding it in the apartment. Understanding dawned on Mazin's face. No, you wouldn't. The USB drive is taped to my body, Elif said. And right now, Maria is calling my family in Turkey, telling them everything. Telling them about the videos, about your victims, about where to find the evidence. When I jump, they'll demand a full investigation. They'll demand to see my body. They'll demand an autopsy. And when they do the autopsy, they'll find the drive. You stupid girl, Mazin hissed. Do you think your death will change anything? I'll tell the police you were mentally ill. Suicidal. I'll produce psychiatric records. I have doctors who will testify you were unstable. Your family will believe I tried to help you. This will change nothing. It will change everything, Elif said. Because once they find the USB drive, once they see the evidence, once they know that Maria, Yuki, and Amara are your previous wives, all supposedly dead, they'll have to investigate. The international media is going to be all over this. A bride jumping from the Burj Khalifa after 6 days of marriage? That's news. And when my family shows up demanding answers, when they tell their story about the phone call from Maria, when they push for the truth. Your money and connections won't be enough. The whole world will be watching. Mazin lunged forward, trying to grab her, but Elif stepped back, closer to the railing. "Don't!" he shouted. "Don't do this. We can negotiate. I'll let them all go. I'll release Maria, Yuki, Amara, all of them. I'll give you money, your passport, anything you want. Just don't jump. Just give me the USB drive." "You're lying," Elif said calmly. "You'll never let them go. You can't. It's not about the women for you, it's about the control. It's about the collection. You'll never stop. Unless someone stops you." She climbed onto the railing, her bare feet finding purchase on the narrow ledge. The wind was stronger here, pulling at her nightgown, threatening her balance. From this height, she could see the marina, the beaches, the sprawling city that had seemed like a dream destination just a week ago. Now it was a graveyard of disappeared women. "Elif, please." Mazin's voice had changed. He sounded desperate now. "Think about your family. Think about what this will do to them." "I am thinking about them," Elif said, and tears streamed down her face now. "I'm thinking about how they'll finally know the truth. I'm thinking about how my death will save Maria, Yuki, Amara, and 8 other women. I'm thinking about how many future victims won't disappear because you'll be exposed." She thought about her mother, who would cry for her, her father, who would blame himself, her sister, who would miss her. But she also thought about Maria's mother in the Philippines, who had buried an empty coffin, about Yuki's family in Japan, who believed their daughter died in a foreign land, about Amara's family in Nigeria, who mourned a daughter who was still alive. Her death would hurt her family, but it would give 11 families the truth. "You're not brave," Mazin spat, his desperation turning back to venom. "You're a coward, taking the easy way out." "Maybe," Elif said, "but I'm a coward who's going to destroy you." She closed her eyes and thought about the USB drive taped to her thigh. On it was everything: the training video, the wedding photos, the psychological torture sessions, the master ledger, the proof of 11 women's erasure. Evidence that would be found, that would be impossible to explain away, that would unravel his entire operation. She thought about Maria, Yuki, and Amara, who would finally be identified as his previous wives, who would finally be reunited with their families, who would finally be free. She thought about the 8 other women in his other properties, who would be found and rescued once the investigation began. And she thought about all the future victims who would never exist because Mazin Al-Nahyan would finally be stopped. "I'm sorry, Mama," Elif whispered in Turkish. "I'm sorry, Baba. But this is the only way." And then she let go. The fall was not peaceful. The wind screamed in her ears. The city rushed up to meet her with terrifying speed. 8 seconds felt like both an eternity and an instant. In those 8 seconds, Elif thought, let them find the evidence. Let them investigate. Let them expose him. Let them free the others. Let my death mean something. And then there was impact. And then there was silence. 124 floors above, Mazin Al-Nahyan stood on his balcony, staring down at the plaza below where a white nightgown billowed in the morning breeze like a fallen angel. He had made a mistake. His first real mistake in a decade of perfect operations. He had underestimated wife number 4. And that mistake would cost him everything. The impact of Elif's body hitting the marble plaza outside the Burj Khalifa at 9:16 a.m. created a sound that security guard Hassan El-Mansouri would never forget. He was the first to reach her, already calling emergency services, already knowing there was nothing anyone could do. A crowd gathered within seconds. Tourists taking morning photos, residents heading to work, hotel staff rushing out, everyone with their phones, capturing the white nightgown spread across blood-stained marble. The dark hair fanned out like a halo, the impossible stillness of death. Within minutes, the videos were uploading. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. A bride had jumped from the world's tallest building. The story was already going viral. Dubai police arrived in 8 minutes. Lieutenant Khalid Rahman took one look at the scene and immediately called for senior detectives. This wasn't just a suicide. This was going to be international news. The woman was clearly a bride, the white nightgown, the wedding ring still on her finger. And she had jumped from a penthouse in the Burj Khalifa. Whoever she was connected to wealth and power. "Seal the building," Rahman ordered. "No one leaves. Find out which apartment she came from. And someone get me an ID on the victim." It took less than 15 minutes to trace which penthouse the glass had shattered from. 124th floor. Registered to Sheikh Mazin Al-Nahyan. Well-connected businessman. Distant royal family member. This was going to be complicated. When police knocked on Mazin's door at 9:47 a.m., he answered looking disheveled and shocked. "Officers, thank God you're here," he said, his voice shaking. "My wife, she was having psychological problems. I tried to stop her, but she broke the glass and jumped before I could reach her. It happened so fast. I couldn't save her." "Your wife, sir?" Rahman asked. "How long have you been married?" 6 days, Mazin said, and manufactured tears filled his eyes. "We just had our wedding. She seemed fine, but this morning she became erratic. She was talking about conspiracies, about being trapped. I think the stress of the marriage, the move to Dubai, it was too much for her mental state." Rahman noticed 3 women in housekeeping uniforms standing in the background, their faces pale. "And these are my household staff," Mazin said smoothly. "They witnessed her behavior this morning. They can confirm she was acting unstable." But Rahman was a good detective. He noticed how the 3 women wouldn't meet his eyes, how they stood too still, too rigid, how they looked terrified, not of the situation, but of the man they worked for. "We'll need to interview everyone separately," Rahman said, "and we'll need to search the apartment. This is a potential crime scene until we determine otherwise." "Of course," Mazin said. "I want to cooperate fully. This is a tragedy. I loved my wife." While crime scene investigators examined the broken balcony door, Rahman pulled the 3 housekeepers aside one by one. The Filipino woman, Maria, was first. "How long have you worked for Sheikh Al-Nahyan?" Rahman asked. 8 years, sir," Maria said, her eyes downcast. "And you witnessed Mrs. Al-Nahyan's behavior this morning?" Maria hesitated, and in that hesitation, Rahman saw something. Fear. Conflict. A secret struggling to break free. "Sir," Maria finally whispered, "you should check the victim's body carefully during the autopsy. She was carrying something. Something important." Rahman's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "I can't say more." "Hill." Maria glanced toward where Mazin was speaking with other officers. "Please, just check her body. And call her family in Turkey. They received a phone call from this apartment at 9 a.m. They know things. Important things." Before Rahman could press further, Mazin appeared. "Is there a problem, officer?" "No problem, sir," Rahman said smoothly. "Just standard questions." But he made a note in his phone. "Check body thoroughly. Contact Turkish family. Something was wrong here." The autopsy was scheduled for that afternoon. Dr. Fatima Al-Hashimi, Dubai's chief medical examiner, began her examination at 2 p.m. Cause of death was obvious. Multiple traumatic injuries consistent with a fall from extreme height. But Dr. Al-Hashimi was thorough. She always was. When she examined the inner thigh, she found something unusual. Medical tape securing a small object to the skin. A USB drive. "That's odd," she muttered, carefully removing it. "Very odd." She immediately called Lieutenant Rahman. "You need to come to the morgue. Now, I found something." Rahman arrived within 20 minutes. Dr. Al-Hashimi handed him an evidence bag containing the USB drive. It was taped to her inner thigh, deliberately hidden. She wanted someone to find this during autopsy. "Can we see what's on it?" "I already had my tech look at it," Dr. Al-Hashimi said. "You're going to want to sit down for this. What they found on that USB drive would blow the case wide open." The first file was labeled "Read Me First." It was a video, Mazin Al-Nahyan speaking directly to camera, explaining in clinical detail his system for preserving women. How to select vulnerable targets. How to manipulate families into approving marriages. How to isolate and psychologically torture women. How to fake their deaths. how to convert them from wives into servants. I call it preservation, Mazin said on the video, his voice filled with pride. These women are corrupted by modern values. They need structure, control, purpose. As wives, they're temporary. As servants, they're permanent. And they can never leave, because the world thinks they're dead. Rahman felt sick to his stomach as he watched. The other files were even more damning. Wedding photos of the three housekeepers, Maria Santos, Yuki Tanaka, Amara Okafor, all married to Mazin in previous years. Death certificates for all three women, filed with various governments. Videos of Mazin psychologically torturing them, breaking them down, forcing them to accept their new roles as servants. And a master ledger. 11 women total. 3 in the penthouse. 8 others scattered across 7 properties in Dubai. All supposedly dead. All actually alive and enslaved. Jesus Christ, Rahman breathed. This isn't just a suicide. This is a trafficking operation. At 4 p.m., a phone call came in from Turkey. Elif's father, Elif Demir, was on the line, hysterical. "My daughter called us this morning," he shouted in broken English. "A woman named Maria called from that apartment. She said my daughter found evidence that the housekeepers are previous wives, that they're all being held prisoner. She said Elif was going to expose him. This wasn't suicide. This was murder, or she killed herself to escape him." Rahman's blood ran cold. The pieces were falling into place. At 6 p.m., armed police raided Mazin's penthouse. They arrested him as he tried to destroy his laptop. They took Maria, Yuki, and Amara into protective custody. All 3 women broke down when told they were safe, that they could contact their families, that they were free. "She saved us," Maria sobbed. "Elif saved us." She knew this was the only way. Over the next 48 hours, the investigation exploded. Police raided all 7 of Mazin's properties. They found 8 more women: Svetlana Kozlov, Priya Kapoor, Carmen Vega, Lin Chen, Fatima Al-Mazin, Nadia Ivanov, Zara Mansour, and Sophia Hassan, all in various states of captivity and psychological trauma, all supposedly dead, all very much alive. The international media descended on Dubai like locusts. The Dubai collection scandal dominated headlines worldwide. A sheikh who had collected wives like art pieces, erasing their identities, enslaving them while the world thought they were dead. Elif's sacrifice had exposed everything. Mazin's laptop contained even more evidence. The training video, detailed files on each victim, financial records showing payments to coroners, police officers, embassy officials who had helped him forge death certificates. And most damningly, communications with other wealthy men discussing similar operations. This was bigger than one predator. This was a network. Detective Rahman interviewed Maria extensively. She told him everything. 8 years of captivity, the psychological torture, how Elif had found the evidence and made the plan to expose Mazin. "She knew she was going to die," Maria said through tears. "She chose death over becoming what we were. And she chose to make her death mean something. She saved 11 women. Maybe more, once you investigate his contacts." Elif's family arrived in Dubai 2 days later. Her mother collapsed when she saw her daughter's body. Her father demanded justice with a fury that wouldn't be denied. Her sister, Zainab, vowed to become a prosecutor and dedicate her life to preventing other women from suffering the same fate. The evidence was overwhelming. Mazin Al-Nahyan was charged with 11 counts of kidnapping, 11 counts of false imprisonment, human trafficking, document fraud, conspiracy, and contributing to the suicide of Elif Demir. His connections couldn't save him this time. The international pressure was too intense. The evidence too clear. The public outrage too fierce. At his arraignment, Mazin maintained his composure. "I was preserving tradition," he said calmly. "These women needed structure and purpose. I gave that to them." The judge's response was ice cold. "You didn't preserve anything. You destroyed 11 lives. And one brave woman destroyed you to save the others. Bail denied. You'll await trial in maximum security." As Mazin was led away in chains, he passed Maria, Yuki, and Amara in the courtroom gallery. They stood together, no longer servants, no longer erased. They stood as survivors, as witnesses, as proof that Elif's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. "She did it," Amara whispered. "Elif actually did it. She freed us all." The investigation was just beginning. Mazin's network connections were being traced. His financial records were revealing other men, other operations, other women who might still be trapped. But for now, 11 women were free. 11 families had their daughters back. And one young architect from Istanbul had proven that even in death, courage could defeat evil. Elif Demir had jumped from the Burj Khalifa not because she was broken, but because she was unbreakable. She had chosen the ultimate sacrifice to expose the ultimate predator. And the world would never forget her name. 6 months after Elif Demir's death, the world was still reeling from what had been exposed. The trial of Sheikh Mazin Al-Nahyan became the most watched legal proceeding in Middle Eastern history, broadcast internationally as a cautionary tale about power, control, and the women who finally fought back. Maria Santos sat in the courtroom on the day of sentencing, flanked by Yuki Tanaka and Amara Okafor, 3 women who had been erased, who had spent years as ghosts, now sitting in the public gallery as the world watched. They were no longer housekeepers. They were survivors. They were witnesses. They were proof. The prosecution had spent weeks laying out the evidence. The USB drive that Elif had taped to her body became Exhibit A digital testament to Mazin's systematic destruction of women's lives. The training video was played in court, and even hardened journalists had to leave the room as Mazin's voice calmly explained how to psychologically torture women into submission. Prosecutor Aisha Al-Mazrouei, the same woman who had fought for years to be taken seriously in Dubai's male-dominated legal system, presented each piece of evidence with surgical precision. Wedding photos of Maria from 2014, when she had been a hopeful bride. Death certificates filed in the Philippines claiming she died in a car accident. Videos of Mazin breaking her down, day by day, until she forgot she had ever been anything but a servant. The same pattern for Yuki, for Amara, for 8 other women found in his properties. For Elif, whose conversion had barely begun before she chose death over erasure. The defense would have you believe their client was preserving tradition, Al-Mazrouei said in her closing arguments. But there is no tradition that condones slavery. There is no honor in faking women's deaths to their families. There is no preservation in destroying a human being's identity and keeping them as property. She turned to face Mazin directly. You didn't preserve these women, Mr. Al-Nahyan. You collected them. You broke them. You erased them from existence while keeping them alive to serve you. And when one woman, Elif Demir, discovered what you were doing, when she found evidence of your crimes, you thought you could break her too. But you couldn't. So she took the one action that would expose you, that would free the others, that would ensure your operation ended. She chose death to defeat you. And she succeeded. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Maria crying softly. Mazin's defense attorney attempted to argue diminished capacity, cultural misunderstanding, mental illness. But the evidence was overwhelming. The training video showed clear premeditation. The master ledger showed systematic planning. The financial records showed calculated bribery of officials. This wasn't madness, it was methodical evil. When given a chance to speak, Mazin stood and addressed the court with chilling calm. I was born into a world that valued tradition, honor, family structure. I watched as modern values corrupted women, made them forget their place, made them believe they could exist independently. I tried to correct that, to preserve what was being lost. History will judge whether I was right. History has already judged, the judge replied coldly. Mazin Al-Nahyan, this court finds you guilty on all counts. 11 counts of kidnapping, 11 counts of false imprisonment, human trafficking, document fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and contributing to the death of Elif Demir. The sentence is life imprisonment without possibility of parole, to be served in maximum security. Additionally, all your assets will be seized and distributed to your victims and their families as restitution. The courtroom erupted. Elif's family, sitting in the front row, collapsed into each other's arms. Her mother, Ice, sobbed with a mixture of grief and vindication. Her father, Mehmet, simply closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, my daughter. Thank you." Her sister, Zeynep, now 21, stood and stared at Mazin as he was led away in chains. She had been accepted to law school. She would become a prosecutor. She would dedicate her life to ensuring no other woman suffered what her sister had suffered. As Mazin passed the gallery where his 11 victims sat, he turned to look at them one final time. Maria met his eyes without flinching, something she couldn't have done 6 months ago. Yuki held her head high. Amara smiled, a fierce smile of victory. "You lost," Amara said simply. "She beat you." For the first time since his arrest, Mazin's composure cracked. His face twisted with rage and disbelief. A man who had controlled everything suddenly realizing he controlled nothing. And then he was gone, dragged away to spend the rest of his life in a cell. A kind of erasure he had never imagined for himself. The investigation expanded far beyond Mazin. The USB drive had contained not just evidence of his crimes, but hints of a broader network. Financial transactions to an organization called Heritage Preservation Society. Encrypted communications with other wealthy men discussing similar operations. Detective Layla Hassan, who had been promoted to head Dubai's new human trafficking division, followed every lead. Within months, the investigation had spread to 12 countries. 47 men were identified as part of the network. 63 additional women were found in various stages of captivity, some held for over 15 years, so broken they initially refused rescue, terrified it was another form of psychological torture. Some arrests made international headlines. A Saudi prince who had maintained a private compound for his collection. A Kuwaiti oil executive with properties across 3 countries. A British businessman with ties to Parliament who had been operating in London for a decade. Other arrests happened quietly, wealthy families paying for silence, lawyers negotiating plea deals in exchange for information about other network members. Every woman freed, every predator arrested, was because Elif Demir had made the ultimate sacrifice. Because she had hidden evidence on her body and jumped from the world's tallest building to ensure that evidence would be found. Maria Santos returned to the Philippines 6 months after the trial, stepping off a plane to face the family who had buried an empty coffin 8 years ago. Her mother collapsed when she saw her. Her siblings couldn't believe she was real. The reunion was broadcast on Philippine television, a mother touching her daughter's face over and over, crying, "You're alive, you're alive, my baby is alive." But the reunion was bittersweet. 8 years had passed. Her younger brother, who had been in college when she died, was now married with a child. Her family had mourned, moved on, rebuilt their lives around her absence. Coming back meant disrupting their healing, forcing them to relive the grief of losing her all over again, even though she was standing right there. "I'm sorry," Maria told her mother through tears. "I'm sorry I couldn't come back sooner. I'm sorry I let you think I was dead." "This wasn't your fault," her mother said fiercely. "This was never your fault. That monster did this to you, and that brave Turkish girl saved you. We will honor her memory forever." Maria started speaking publicly about her experience, becoming an advocate for trafficking survivors. She established the Elif Demir Foundation, using her share of the restitution money from Mazin's seized assets. The foundation provided therapy, legal assistance, and job training for women who had been held in long-term captivity. "Elif saved my life," Maria said in her first public speech. Her voice carried across news networks worldwide. She had been trapped for only 6 days, but she understood what I had lived for 8 years. She could have tried to escape and save only herself. Instead, she chose to die in a way that would expose everything, that would free all of us. I will spend the rest of my life making sure her sacrifice means something. Yuki Tanaka returned to Japan, where her family had also held a funeral and moved on. The reunion was quiet, private, very Japanese in its restraint. But her mother wept as she held her daughter, and her father apologized over and over for not searching harder, for accepting her death too easily. Yuki had been a violinist before Mazin destroyed her. Her hands still trembled from years of suppressed trauma, but she slowly began playing again. Simple scales at first, then etudes. Eventually, pieces she had performed before her captivity. Music became her therapy, her way of reclaiming the identity Mazin had tried to erase. She performed her first public concert a year after her release, a memorial concert dedicated to Elif Demir. She played Vivaldi's Winter from the Four Seasons, and when she finished, the audience stood in silence, tears streaming down their faces. "I'm alive because a woman I knew for 6 days chose to die," Yuki said into the microphone, her English heavily accented but clear. "I will play music for the rest of my life to honor her courage." Amara Okafor returned to Lagos, Nigeria, where her family's grief turned to rage when they learned the truth. Her father, a prominent journalist, wrote a series of articles about the trafficking network that won international awards. Her mother became an activist, working to strengthen laws protecting women from coercive control. Amara herself wrote a book, Collected, the women Sheikh Mazin Al-Nahyan tried to erase. It became an international bestseller, translated into 40 languages. She described in brutal detail the 2 years of psychological torture, the way hope had been weaponized against her, the moment she realized she was better off broken than fighting. And she wrote about Elif, the new bride who had found the evidence, who had made the plan, who had hidden the USB drive on her body and jumped to ensure it would be found. "She was with us for 6 days, Amara wrote. "But in those 6 days, she showed more courage than I had shown in 2 years. She saw what we had become and refused to become it herself. She chose death over erasure. And in dying, she gave us back our lives." The 8 other women rescued from Mazin's properties each had their own journey home. Some reunited joyfully with families. Others found their families had truly moved on, had remarried their fathers or mothers to other people, had erased them so completely that coming back felt like haunting their own lives. 3 women required long-term psychiatric hospitalization. The isolation, the psychological torture, the complete destruction of identity had damaged them beyond what therapy could immediately repair. But they were alive, they were free, and they were no longer property. Elif's family transformed their grief into action. Her father, Mehmet, sold his textile business and established the Elif Demir Memorial Scholarship for young women studying architecture. Her mother, Ice, became an advocate for mental health support for families of trafficking victims. Her sister, Zeynep, was accepted to law school with full scholarship, her essay about her sister's sacrifice moving the admissions committee to tears. They visited Elif's grave every week, a simple headstone in Istanbul with an inscription that read, Elif Demir, 1998 to 2022. She jumped so others could fly. On the 1-year anniversary of Elif's death, a memorial was held in Dubai. 11 women stood together, Maria, Yuki, Amara, and 8 others, all alive because one woman had chosen the ultimate sacrifice. They stood at the base of the Burj Khalifa, looking up at the 124th floor, and released white doves into the sky. Elif's mother spoke, her voice breaking. "My daughter is gone, but she is not forgotten. 11 women are free because of her courage. 63 more women were found because her death triggered an international investigation. And how many future victims will never exist because Mazin Al-Nahyan and his network were exposed? Hundreds? Thousands? We will never know. But we know this. My daughter's death was not meaningless. It was the most meaningful thing she could have done." Detective Hassan attended the memorial, standing in the back. She had been working non-stop for a year, following every lead, finding every victim, building cases against every man in the network. The investigation was ongoing. New connections discovered monthly, new victims found, new predators arrested. "This case changed everything," Hassan said in an interview later. "Before Elif Demir, we didn't know networks like this existed. We didn't know women were being systematically erased and enslaved while the world thought they were dead. Now we know. Now we're looking. And we're finding them. Every woman we rescue, we tell them about Elif, about how one woman's courage exposed everything. It gives them hope." The Heritage Preservation Society was completely dismantled. 47 men arrested. assets seized, operations shut down. But Hassan knew the ideology behind it, the belief that women were property to be collected and controlled. That ideology existed everywhere. The fight was far from over. In Istanbul, Elif's bedroom remained unchanged, her architecture books on the shelf, her sketches of sustainable housing for refugees still pinned to the wall, her dreams of making the world better through design, frozen at age 24. But her legacy lived on. In 11 freed women, in 63 rescued victims, in strengthened international laws against trafficking, in the Elif Demir Foundation, in her sister's legal career, in every woman who heard her story and found the courage to escape their own situation. Elif Demir had been trapped in a nightmare for 6 days. She had discovered evidence of systematic evil, and she had made a choice, not to save herself but to save everyone else. She had taped evidence to her body and jumped from the world's tallest building, knowing that her death would trigger an investigation that would expose everything. She had been right, and the world would never forget the Turkish bride who jumped from the Burj Khalifa. Not because she was broken, but because she was unbreakable. Not because she had given up, but because she refused to give in. Elif Demir had died at 24, but her courage would live forever. Following Elif Demir's death and the evidence she left behind, international authorities arrested 47 men across 12 countries. Over 63 women were freed from various forms of captivity. Mazin Al-Nahyan is serving life without parole in a Dubai maximum security prison. He has refused all interview requests. Maria Santos returned to the Philippines and established the Elif Demir Foundation, which has helped over 3,000 trafficking survivors worldwide. Yuki Tanaka performs with the Tokyo Philharmonic and teaches music therapy to trauma survivors. Amara Okafor's book, Collected, became an international bestseller and was adapted into an award-winning documentary. Elif Demir's family continues to honor her memory through scholarships and advocacy work. Her sister, Zeynep, became a prosecutor specializing in trafficking cases. The investigation into the Heritage Preservation Society network is ongoing. If you or someone you know is experiencing coercive control or trafficking, resources are available. You are not alone. Help exists. Freedom is possible.